are going to go over something I want to ask you about because you've been fascinated by this thing. This whole Larry Bird and Luka thing. You have just you've written me about it. I read the article. Why are you so fascinated by these two?
Well, because you obviously played with Larry, spent every day with him for 6 seasons, if my memory's right. So
Yeah.
when someone like you says that Luka is a carbon copy of Larry Bird, that's obviously a more powerful statement than someone like me making it, or a fan or any outside observer. For you to kind of feel that strongly about it made me want to write about it, because the comparison game to me is always a little bit tricky. Like to me, especially, we're talking, these are, Larry Bird is one of the greatest players we've ever seen. Luka's only in year 3. He's going to have to do this a lot longer before we talk about him the same way. But to me, these two guys are one of ones, one of a kind, even though there are obviously are similarities. But like I said, when I hear someone like you, who's been in this game for more than 40 years, when you feel so strongly about it, that's what kind of made me want to get you on the phone and dig into it with you.
It's really funny because people ask me, and I'll give you this. I said right now, I think that you asked me, so who would Larry Bird what would he be like in the NBA? And Luka would be him or he'd be Luka. And I said that because I think Larry Bird's game he would be, and this is kind of out there, but he would be a better player now. As great as he was, he'd be a better player now than he was in the old NBA, because it was more about foot speed, trying to get to places. Now you can't hand check. So that's why I feel Larry would be so much better.
And that's really kind of my, when I think about this, because you can say it as loud as you want. There's always going to be people who say, there's only one Larry Bird. I don't even want to hear this. And there's nothing we can say to convince them. Kind of, to me, what is the fun what if, which is, again, it's a what if. We're never going to get the answer. But exactly what you just said. I became a fan of this game in the 70s and 80s. And to me, that is the most glorious period in NBA history. I romanticize it. I was a kid. And just, that's when I fell in love with this league. And when you're a kid and just a fan, and then you're a journalist, there are obviously differences. So the 70s and 80s to me are this untouchable, beautiful period when the NBA grew, started growing to what it is now. But I love to play the what if game. What if Larry played today, came up now, had the ball in his hands all the time, and was more of a playmaker than a small forward in one of the most bruising front courts ever, when obviously he played with McHale and Parrish. I mean, it was just such a completely different time. The game was played completely differently. Larry might not have enjoyed it. I don't know if we had him here, maybe he'd say he wouldn't want to play the way the game is now, but I would love to see where he's shooting 10 threes a game and making plays instead of playing, like you said, in the hand check era when you guys all beat the hell out of each other. I mean, it'd be fascinating.
I'm kind of really want to know your take right now on, looking from the outside, how you guys feel and what's going on in Celtic world, looking from the outside, because right now the pot is stirring up here, and I want to know really what your opinion is.
And rightfully so. I mean, I live in Dallas, and the Mavericks would have been considered the most disappointing team of the first half of the season, if not for Boston. That team is the Celtics right now. I mean, this team went to the conference finals last year. Tatum and Brown are as enviable a duo as you can have. They're exactly what you want in today's NBA. Long, two-way player. They play both ends of the floor. They can play multiple positions. I mean, right there, that's a core that that a lot of teams are jealous of. But, for reasons that you guys know better than me, because you watch this team every day, no Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker's injury issues. There are a zillion holes on the bench. And now, Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens are facing the kind of pressure that maybe they've never faced. I mean, I think people forget Danny. There were periods early in Danny's GM tenure where he did face a lot of pressure, and obviously you get it. You get Garnett and Ray Allen and win a championship, and things change. And it was a long, long time ago. But really, since the pre-Garnett days, this is probably the most heat Danny has faced.
What news do you see that we're going to be looking at? Because I like to look into a crystal ball, and I know you're out there looking at all these different things. What do you see that's coming towards the NBA or this year that is going to surprise us? So we're going to go, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
Well, look, everyone's obviously excited about the trade deadline, which I think we're basically a month out now when we're chatting here. So a month away. But look, the biggest trade move has already happened. There's going to be nothing on the scale of a Harden deal. The consistent messaging around Bradley Beal is that the Wizards are not going to trade him in season, and to this point, I think that still holds. Unless Bradley Beal goes to the Wizards and says, it's time, I want to move, I want to go somewhere else. Until that happens, I don't think the Wizards are going to trade him. And again, the signals 1 month out say that that's not going to happen before this trade deadline. And then probably the next most significant name is Kyle Lowry. And I think it's a very similar situation. Kyle Lowry is royalty in Toronto for what he contributed to that championship team. Unless he pushes it, unless he goes to the Raptors and says, I want to go somewhere else. My time is up here. Let's find me a new home. Until he pushes that, I don't think Toronto trades him. And to this point, that hasn't happened either. So look, at trade deadline time, there's going to be moves. And there are rumblings that the Celtics are actively exploring all their options, but exactly what that's going to look like, I can't tell you today, a month out. But I think Danny's been pretty clear here with his interviews in the last couple of weeks that he's looking, and I know Celtics fans are sick of hearing that. I know there's this sentiment that, we never make moves. I mean, I would question that a little bit. They did go all in on Kyrie Irving, and that didn't work out. So I don't think it's accurate to say they never push their chips into the middle of the table, but they're looking, they're trying, they know they need changes because this group is stagnating.
Utah Jazz. That's the only word I'll say. I'll let you finish. What the hell is going on? I mean, I understand Utah's a good team, but this is ridiculous right now.
No, I mean, you're right. And that's why I felt like they should have 3 All-Stars, because if you look at this season, it's parity everywhere. It's roster disruptions. Obviously, teams are struggling to deal with COVID, and we've had more than 30 game postponements. And the one sustained dominant force, it's the Utah Jazz. They've married rampant 3-point shooting with their great defense. I mean, they've always been a good ball movement team with Quinn Snyder, but now they're just shooting the 3 freely, and they're making a lot of them. And I mean, they're 26-6 as we speak, and 22 of those wins by double digits. I mean, but saying all that, they are one of those, they got to prove it to us in the playoffs. And I think they know it. And I think even they would say it, that they know they can dominate the regular season, and there's still going to be skepticism. They're going to have to show us in the playoffs, but they have a great thing going. They came into the season with continuity, which is a huge advantage in this season full of disruptions. And, they're doing as much as you can do by February 25th. Can't do more than they've done to this point.
I see the Lakers and I see Brooklyn. Everybody's saying those are going to be the final 2 teams. Could that possibly be right now? Or do you think that, Utah is still in the mix?
Look, I think Utah has to be taken seriously. But with the Lakers, if Anthony Davis comes back, they resume their role as favorites, even with the questions about their supporting cast. But look, they've also been without Schroeder here too, and he's a huge part of what the Lakers went into this season thinking, because they had this, the Lakers in Miami had a 72-day off season, less
Yeah.
than 8 weeks off after the bubble. They made the trade for Schroeder for energy, for scoring, to help get them through the regular season as much as they would need him in the playoffs, because you can't just ask LeBron to carry this crazy load at age 36. So in this, this slump that they've hit, it's not just that they've been without Anthony Davis, but if Anthony Davis comes back, the Lakers are the favorites in the West. You got to beat them 4 times. It's as great as Utah looks. I don't know that anyone would bet on them to beat a full strength Laker team 4 times. And Brooklyn, I was a huge skeptic of the trade. I didn't like it. I didn't think those 3 guys could function together. Like all skeptics of this trade, I'm getting pretty nervous because they look great. And really, the 3 of them haven't even played together yet. There's always somebody out. I still think the defensive issues are a concern and the depth issues are a concern. But looking at this Eastern Conference, who's going to beat them? This East is winnable the way they are. Milwaukee is not what they were. The Celtics clearly are not what they were. Toronto remains a dangerous out, but they're not nearly as potent as they were. You look, the East is a mess. So
the only one I say, and maybe I'll kind of disagree, would be Philadelphia with Doc Rivers. Seems to have Joel Embiid and Simmons on the same page right now.
They are, no question, they are the number 1 threat to Brooklyn, but by no means dominant. They're still active. With Daryl Morey, you still expect them to try to make at least one move in the next month. Embiid and Simmons are both playing fantastic, maybe the best that they've ever played. Simmons is a 2-way absolute menace, and Embiid, this is his best season so far. But they're also like Utah. They can look fantastic now. Are we gonna, they have to prove it to us in the playoffs, and they can say that's unfair, but that's the way the NBA works.
What did you read with the whole Draymond Green comments about owners and players not treated on the same page? How did you feel about all his comments?
I think a lot of what he said has merit. And basically, look, he brought Harden into it, and I think maybe that diluted the argument somewhat, because you tell me, if Harden was in your locker room in your day and did all the stuff he did to get himself traded out of Houston, I think his teammates would have had a lot to say to him before even those of us in the media commented about it. So the way Harden comported himself to get traded, I don't think is defensible in any single way. But a lot of what Draymond says is true, and I think basically the real message that he was trying to get across, and I'm not sure that it came through for anyone. Players get crushed when they want out. Teams do not get crushed when they want to move a guy, and that's a huge disparity. And he put a pretty loud megaphone on it.
Kyrie Irving said something the other day, which part of it I agreed, and then part of it I was he was talking about changing the logo of the NBA to Kobe Bryant instead of Jerry West. I felt that, and I was really good with that. But then he went into the whole thing about, blackness, and I was good with the first part he used, and the last argument I didn't really feel that way.
I haven't seen his whole statement, so I don't know exactly what. I just know the basics, that he proposed that the logo should be changed. It's an interesting topic, and I'm sure a lot of people would probably be open to it, because in the modern fans probably don't even know how the NBA logo originated. So I'm not smart enough to know the business complexities of that. I mean, look, in general, I'm kind of resistant to change, and that's one of my faults. And I'm an old school guy, and so it's hard for me on a lot of levels to imagine the logo changing. But that's never it's funny living in Dallas. Mark Cuban says this all the time. I mean, the way we've always done it, that's a terrible justification for anything. So look, if a lot of people feel strongly that the logo should be changed, I mean, that there should be an open discussion about it. Maybe it's something the league should entertain. I have to admit, I haven't given it a huge amount of thought, but look, Kobe, among players today, among this generation of players, I mean, he's their Jordan. And so the love for him is that deep.
Mark Cuban, you bring that up, and I'm glad you did. Did you realize that the national anthem hadn't been played during the times that these games were being played? Did you realize that or not?
This is terrible, and I feel just like an idiot, honestly, stupid. I only went to 3 Mavericks games this season, so it wasn't going every time. And I think it's not a great defense, but somewhat in the defense of media members like myself who missed it because fans weren't in the building. I think just the whole feel of how a game was, and we're sitting way up there, so it just, the whole thing felt different. But still, we lots of us should have noticed, and it says a lot that it went 12-13. It wasn't until the first game with fans that this became something that people were talking about. So that was definitely I don't feel great about it, being so off my game.
Yeah, I know in a red state like Texas, I'm like, how do you even get away with that? I mean, it's like
nobody, because nobody's in there. Nobody, and as media, typically we'd be downstairs, and so we're up. I think that's the reason why. Again, it's still, it should have been talked about and noticed and reported a lot sooner. But then on the flip side, it is amazing how the minute it becomes a public issue, that then the league changes the rule. The league knew the whole time that the Mavericks weren't playing the anthem. So
wow.
It's this was not a surprise to the NBA. They knew it. So it's just interesting that the minute this becomes a headline, okay, now the anthem is mandatory again.
So you're saying, I guess, public perception pushes policy in the NBA and every place else, because in this case, no question. I'm almost concerned how they started the game, because we just throw the ball up. All right, let's jump ball and let's go. They went
right to intros. During a typical game, you see guys do their warm-ups, and then they all put their sweats back on because they know they got to line up for the anthem. So for the Dallas home games, these guys were just basically going straight from warm-ups to the intros.
I just want to take a second and talk about Marigold. With their stem cell research has been amazing. I went and did an evaluation, and I ended up getting a shot, and I'm hoping right now I'm going to be back on the court. These guys were brilliant. They communicate well. They give you an education on what it's like. And that is what really, to me, won me over, because not only were they going to give me an operation, a procedure, but they were going to educate me about this procedure. And in learning and being comfortable, that is how you get well, and that's how you become partners. And my big shout out to those guys. They did a fantastic job. Check them out at marigoldmedical.com. That's the place to be. I got a question I normally ask everybody, and you're probably as good as anybody. I'm building the Mount Rushmore in the back of your house. You got 4 people on the sports Mount Rushmore. Who are you putting back there?
Basketball only, right?
No. All sports.
All sports?
Whatever you want. Whoever.
Oh,
this
man.
is your house. I'm telling the crew, hey, Stein wants 4 people back there. Who are the 4 people? I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Who are the 4 people in your backyard?
4 people across all sports. That is not easy at all. I think Muhammad Ali has to be there.
Okay.
For me, there has to be a soccer player there. And look, one of the great things about soccer is they have just as much trouble with their GOAT debate as we do. You know, Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, Russell, Magic. You know, I'm a child of the 80s, so you know, Magic and Bird are not going to win the GOAT argument, but they're at least in the conversation for me. I mean, I don't know how you pick one. And in soccer, it's the same. Pelé and Maradona, it's, you know, we could do hours debating that. One of those two would have to be on there. So
Stein's not ready yet. He's not ready to make a decision.
So you have four. You have four at your fingertips.
I have four that I took. I took Muhammad Ali, like you. I took Michael Jordan. I took the guy who just got hurt, Tiger Woods. And I got the greatest female athlete of all time, Serena Williams. Those are my four.
Tennis is also one of my favorite sports. So I would, you know, I'm with you there. But see, I think it also just depends on your perspective. I'm not a golf guy at all. And look, first of all, what just happened to Tiger Woods is horrific. And I think everyone in sports is praying for his full recovery. But just speaking from my mentality only, like I didn't even think of golf because that's not one of my games. We haven't mentioned the NFL. I mean, in the United States, how are we going to exclude one NFL guy? So if you can come up with four people for sports, you are.
Well, you took one when you said Tiger Woods. You took one when you said Muhammad Ali. And
yeah, so for me, and I realize I'm hedging here in the extreme, but like Muhammad Ali,
okay,
Pelé or Maradona in soccer, your NBA, let's say Jordan, if Jordan's your GOAT, that leaves only one spot for tennis for me because my three favorite sports are the NBA, soccer, and tennis. So I'll co-sign Serena with you, but we don't have a baseball player. We don't have anyone from the NFL. We don't have anyone from track and field and on and on. I mean, so it's like four, man. I'm sorry. I know that this
I'm sorry. That's what they did at Mount Rushmore. They had four presidents and they stopped right there. They didn't say we're going to put another.
But I don't even know what year they made Mount Rushmore. They were probably only choosing from 20 people at that point.
Your read now on everything, you mentioned this, Tiger Woods, what just went on there. Obviously, a tragedy, so many things about him. Just, I don't even know where to start, but your take on it.
Just hope he recovers. I mean, that like it's, to me, it's way too soon to even, can he golf again and all this? Yeah. Like, I mean, man, let's just hope he makes a full recovery and, you know, you didn't have to be you don't have to be a golf fan to have seen the beauty of him with his son when, you know, that was a month ago and they were on the course together. And like, I mean, this guy has kids, he's a father, just get better and to be able to be with your family. And then everything else can be worried about and debated later.
I think that's the big thing when I look at a guy like Tiger Woods. Everybody talks about his career and what he's done. Then he falls off the shelf and then he comes back and now he's hurt in an accident that he says he doesn't even know what happened. I used to live up in those hills in Palos Verdes when I played with the Clippers, and I know some of those ravines. So they're just saying he's lucky to be alive and to have shattered an ankle. And I know obviously you don't want to get into it, but it almost seems now that when they said they're putting a pin in his leg and having to do his ankle over again, it just seems like this is the end from a sports standpoint of him being competitive as a golfer.
You know, it's interesting though, when you were talking about the Mount Rushmore part and what, you know, beyond what a great golfer he was. And I'm actually, you know, he's from the Orange County area, and that's largely where I grew up. Mm-hmm. After leaving Buffalo. So, I mean, I've been hearing about, even though I've never covered golf and it's not my game, I've been hearing about Tiger since he was a kid. I mean, he was a phenom from as long as I remember. But, you know, when you mention a Jordan, a Muhammad Ali, a Serena, and then Tiger Woods as well, I mean, it's not just the athletic excellence, it's the cultural impact that someone like that has so far beyond just their playing ability. And that for those four athletes, I mean,
That is kind of why I took Tiger, that he opened up golf to the masses and he made it a real cool thing for people of color to want to try to get into, and everybody starts seeing the game a little bit different than ever was. Lastly, I want to ask you about, to me, which was one of the most emotional, unbelievable times in my life, and that was being at Kobe Bryant's homegoing and just seeing the people who were there. It was like NBA royalty, life royalty. It was, I couldn't, and I remember saying to somebody, I said, because they were giving me a seat, they gave the team a seat, and then they had individual seats, and I said, well, we'll give you a seat, Max, we'll get you in there. And I'm like, oh man, where am I gonna be sitting, in the nosebleeds? I'm sitting right beside Bill Russell. Jordan is about 3 seats away from me. Wow. Steph is on one side, Kyrie's on another side. But that event, I don't even know call it an event, but that scene alone was something that is so surreal to me. I just wanted to know what you thought about it, because I'm sure in some ways you had to cover that.
Yeah, no, look, I was a Laker beat writer when Kobe came to the NBA, and I was early in my career. Kobe's the first player I ever covered that I was 10 years older than. I was 27. He was 17 when the Lakers drafted him. Wasn't even 18 yet. And you know, I only traveled with him for a year before I moved to Dallas, but he, just because I was there with him at the beginning, he always made time for me in subsequent years. Every time he came to Dallas, we at least got a couple minutes. He always gave me a couple minutes to just me and him catch up, and he knew I would have whatever questions I had to fire at him. So look, I covered his whole career, and I mean, surreal as a word doesn't even come close to, you know, more than a year later, still just it still can't believe it. We just, you know, January, you know, we just did the 1 year kind of remembrance pieces after January, and you know, the remembrance service you're talking about, that was about a year ago from where we are now, and it still just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem possible. It doesn't seem believable, and I still struggle to process it and even explain it.
I'm just like you in that, and the fact that it was so hard to process, and the fact that it's just almost poetic when you think that the Celtics played a game before the home going the next day. Celtics played on a Sunday with Tatum going crazy in the building. And I was thinking, man, 24 hours from now, we're going to be sitting back in this arena, and there's going to be so many sad faces and so many fans. And it was, you know, from Jay-Z to Beyonce to, you know, whoever. And it just defied anything that I've ever been around. I've never been in such awe before in my life. And the appreciation, that's what it told me, the appreciation that they had for Kobe Bryant. That's what really resonated. You know, when Jordan got up to speak and tears in his eyes, and he talks about the emoji, and, you know, and Shaq getting up there telling his story. It was something I don't think I'll ever forget.
Well, because he was another guy that just he went so far beyond sports. It was not, you know, Kobe Bryant was so big that it was more than basketball, and he, you know, he obviously meant a lot to a lot of people, especially in Los Angeles. I mean, he was there for 20 years. I mean, there's been a zillion great Lakers, but I mean, I think he was the quintessential Laker. As great as their teams were in the 80s, and obviously Magic, Kareem, Worthy, and all the guys you played against, I mean, they all obviously have their own huge slice in that franchise's history, but Los Angeles saw Kobe grow up. I mean, the relationship between player and city. It's a bond that is really unmatched.
Lastly, do you know I still have hatred for some of those guys I played against with the Lakers?
Yes,
I,
yes,
I still, yeah, I mean, I am not still, I respect Magic. I love him to death for what he's done. James Worthy, Cooper, Kareem, all those guys. But I still have a dislike and the disdain when I hear their voices. I get irritated. My heart rate goes up. And you talked about the 80s and just that was, I remember playing in that game in 1984 in Boston, probably one of the biggest games ever. And just seeing the Lakers and the Celtics playing for a championship for the seventh game. I and me thinking about me being on the court at that time and playing really well, I still can't hardly grasp that now.
So what happens, obviously in a pandemic, nobody's running into anybody, but before the last year, so what happens when you run into Magic somewhere, you run into, I mean, you know, at an NBA event, you cross paths with your old rivals. What is that like?
I did actually. It was just before Kobe Bryant's, the day before the game, the day of the game, they had myself, Brian Scalabrine, Cooper, and I think Worthy. We were all in a building together, and we were all in there talking, and we were in front of a crowd, and who sticks his head in? Magic. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you guys were having a meeting. I just wanted to come down. And then walks in and proceeds to come up and take the microphone and walks up to me and says, puts his hand out, and I go, I'm not shaking your damn hand. He goes, come on, man, you guys show me love. I'm like, no, I'm not showing you love. So yeah, that's still kind of how I feel today. I mean, I respect them. They made the Celtics greater. They made all of us greater. They made the NBA greater. We made the NBA greater. But it's still just, it just irritates me. James Worthy, even today, when he says, he'll go right now when the Celtics and the Lakers play, he said, yeah, we had to get some more of that Celtic ass today. I'm damn, it's just so disrespectful even today. So it just pisses me off.
Well, I think fans probably enjoy hearing that though. I think they like that the rivalry is still that intense. They don't want you guys to be friends.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming on with me. It's a blast. I've had a ball with you, and you know, we're still waiting on your Mount Rushmore because I think you fluffed on it a little bit, but you know, because you're such a great dude, I'm going to let you go with it. And thank you very much for being on with me.